Welcome to Frost Astrophotography. This is a series of tutorials for the nighttime imaging and astronomy software, also called N.I.N.A. Welcome to this part 3 of my N.I.N.A tutorial video series. In this video, I'm going to go through the Sky Atlas, the framing assistant, and the basic sequencer. As you can see, N.I.N.A is already opened. I have all of my equipment connected, and I will click on the Sky Atlas icon. Now, if this is the first time that you open this, the window here will be empty. And you can start off by searching for, let's say, an object by its name. Let's say M31. You can see here that I found the Andromeda galaxy. You can see some designations, basic information about the target, and the altitude and the transition of the object on the night sky in regards to your position and the time. You can see here that it will pass the meridian for a southern transit at around 8 o'clock, and it is at 68 degrees as its highest position on this day. On the right, I have some basic selections to add this target to a sequence, set this target for the framing assistant, or simply just slew to the target using the mount. I have a lot of search options on the left here. You can use the date to select the target that you found for a different date, let's say in the middle of October. I can see here that the Andromeda galaxy would be a very good target for mid-October, since the meridian transit here will occur around midnight, and I have astro darkness on both sides at basically the same amount. And that will let me capture a lot of Andromeda galaxy during this night. If there's no clouds, of course, and if I don't have any obstruction between the telescope and my target, of course. If I move forward to middle of February next year, you will see that the Andromeda galaxy might not be such a good choice, since the transit south, passing the meridian at around 3 o'clock at the same height, 68 degrees. But I will not be able to start capturing it until astro dark here at around 7 o'clock. And then it will be down below 20 degrees here around midnight. And that is basically too low to image it. You might get obstructions with trees and buildings, and of course you need to cut through all of the atmosphere. If you don't want to search by an object using its name, you can select one or more of all the parameters here. You might want to use the apparent size, for example. Let's say I want to find all the targets that is 10 arc minutes or bigger. And I will get a list here of all the targets that is that size. I can also use the moon here. I can set a minimum distance to the moon. Let's say I want to keep away from the moon as much as possible, since you can see down here that the moon is almost 80% today, and that is not good if you want to imaging in broadband, for example. Let's say I want to have all objects at least 80 degrees away from the moon. Now, since I did not specify anything else, it will search through a very big database, but will find me a lot of objects. But as you can see, all of the objects here is not very good for me. So I want to combine this, for example, with an altitude of at least, say, 50%. Let's see what it comes up with. If I want to, I can also combine this altitude search parameter with visible for a specific duration. For example, if I want it to be visible for at least 3 hours or 5 hours or something like that. Now, I don't know exactly why, but let's see here. It shows me a lot of targets with the altitude not at least 50 degrees. So I'm not sure why that is. Going to remove that. I can also, if I want to, search by object type. Let's say I want to have all the galaxies, but only galaxies. I'll get the galaxies available. Let's say I want to search for everything in a specific constellation. Now I've selected the Andromeda constellation, and I will get all the targets in the database for that is visible for me here. Now this list is sorted by size, and I can select other parameters. I might want to search or order this by apparent magnitude or constellation, surface brightness, or any of the other available options here. Let me remove this so it will not disturb. Now moving on, if I want to, let's say if I decided for the Andromeda galaxy, I can search for it here and send it to the framing assistant. Or I can click on the framing assistant and first of all make sure that I have an image source selected. I'm using the NASA Sky Survey. Then I'm searching for the object. I'm typing in a field of view that is reasonably close to the camera parameters that I have. And also make sure that your camera parameters are correct. Now this is the correct parameters for my camera, but in bin 1 mode. If I'm in bin 2, this will be 4.63 instead, and the width and height will be half that is displayed here. But it's not that important if you get something that is almost close to the truth. Now you click on the load image. And it will load the Andromeda galaxy together with your camera parameters, and you can adjust the field of view or the position of your camera or telescope so that you can make a composition of the image exactly how you want it. Here we go. Now I can take this square. This represents what my camera is being able to collect. If you have a focal length that is higher, you would be able to collect a smaller, with the exception of course, the combination of camera and telescope you have. If you have a lower focal length, you might have a wider field of view, and you can select more. You can also make a mosaic where you have several panels that make up an entire big image. In this view, you can also determine the rotation and adjust that using a manual or automated rotational device if you have one of those connected. But just simply click and drag this square box or box and position it where you want on the image here, and that will be the parameters that you have down here. You can now click slew and center if you want to, but if you're happy with this position and you want to create a sequence for capturing images with this field of view, you click add a target to sequence. Now you have the option of selecting the simple sequencer or the sequencer, and that is a more advanced sequencer that I will be covering in a separate video in this tutorial series. So we're going to start with the simple sequencer. As you can see here, the target has been added to the sequencer, and now I have some available settings to start off with. First of all, I can name it. If I want something else rather than M31, let's say I want to have it named Messier 31, or I want it to be called Andromeda Galaxy, because the name that you put in here is the name that will be entered into the file name when you save images from the acquisition later on. So we start off with some basic settings here. If you want to, you can have this sequence cool your camera. You can have this sequence unpark your mount. And you can have this sequence do an automated meridian flip. Also, you can configure it to warm the camera when the sequence has completed, and also park your mount automatically when this sequence has been completed. Now, if you don't have all of these two on, then you manually have to do it. So if you have off on the cool camera, you have to make sure that your camera is cooled to start with. Also, with the mount, if you have this setting to off, you will need to use the EQ mod or whatever drivers you're using to unpark your mount manually. Or you can go over to the equipment, of course, and mount or telescope that it is called in N.I.N.A, and unpark the mount. So configure what you want to up here, and then you can click on the target options. And now you can configure this sequence to slew to your target, to center the target automatically, and that will basically use N.I.N.A to take an image. It will do a plate solving to figure out where in the night sky the telescope is pointing, and it will compare that to the database of images that it has access to. It will then calculate how to adjust the positioning, it will adjust the mount, and it will take another image. And it will keep doing that until it has perfectly centered on the target that you want it to be pointing at. Now, if you have the correct right ascension and declination numbers here, then this should go very smoothly. If you have an automated rotator or the manual rotator, you click this to on. But beware that if you have a manual rotator, then you will need to manually do this, and the sequencer will stop and tell you to rotate the image in which direction and how many degrees. When you say that you have done it, you will confirm, and then N.I.N.A will take another image and compare the rotation of the target. And if you are off, it will tell you to make adjustments until the rotation is set completely. Since I want this to be automated, I will set this to off, but I will set start guiding to on, and that will tell PHD2 to begin looping exposures and select a star and then begin guiding. Now the next part is autofocus. I will cover autofocus in another video, but if you have configured the basic settings for the autofocus, you can just select on to autofocus on start of this sequence, and if you select on for filter change, it will do another autofocus if or when you change filters. You can also configure the basic sequence in N.I.N.A to do another focus after an elapsed amount of time, let's say 30 minutes, after a number of exposures, or after temperature change or HFR increase. And that will basically protect you against big temperature changes that could affect your optical train or telescope. So you can select after temperature change and then specify that 5 degrees is the most amount of temperature change in degrees Celsius for me that is allowed before N.I.N.A will do another autofocus routine. Now, when that has been completed, we will look at this line here, and you can always add new lines using the plus to add rows to this sequence. A tip is to configure the first row first, like you want it, and if you add rows after that, it will basically copy the first row and you don't have to make as many changes. So we can start by entering the time. If I want to have 300 seconds, it's a light frame. I want to use filter H alpha, for example. With my camera, I want to use binning 2. I want to dither, and I want to do that for every frame using narrowband and the 5-minute exposures. I will use the default gain and the default offset. And I want to have, let's say, 30 of those frames. Now you can see it will calculate the finish time and duration. And let's say I want to add more. I just click on the plus sign here. And I can specify that this will be oxygen 3 and this will be sulfur 2. And now you can see that the calculated finishing time will be 3:57. So I'm basically good here because I'm at 30 degrees, around 30 or maybe 25 or something like that. So that's maybe pushing it a bit, but you can play with these numbers to see what you can fit in during the imaging session. You can always add more targets to this sequence by using the plus sign up here. Let's say you want to do 30 frames for Andromeda Galaxy, and then you can add another target, and you want to have 30 frames for that, and a third target and 30 frames for that. You get 3 different targets, and it will work through one target at a time and all of the rows in the sequence before it finishes. If you want, you can save this. You can save one target, the active target that you are on. If you click on the little disk or save icon, you can save that target as a set. And you can also click on the Save Sequence button down here, and that will save the entire sequence, including all of the targets that you have selected. So basically, when you have finished, you simply make sure that you have everything prepared to start imaging. If you, like me, have an observatory, you might want to make sure that you have the roof open, for example, if you're not controlling the roof through N.I.N.A. And I'm not at the moment. That's why I need to make sure, because if I were to start this sequence now, it will basically crash into the roof of my observatory. And when you click start, it will start working through one target, all of the rows, next target, all of the rows, etc. until it has finished. And if you have specified to warm the camera and park the mount up here, it will also do that automatically. And if you should be passing the meridian, it will also do a meridian flip. And after a meridian flip, it will recenter the target, and it will also run through an autofocus before continuing on with the sequence here. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already doing so. If you want to support me and my work with these videos, you can make a small donation using the option listed in the description below. Thank you so much for your continued support, and until the next video, I wish you have some clear skies.